you or anyone else had a bad experience with law enforcement, all of that more coming up on this episode of Tales, episode 1, coming up next.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help your black ass. You goddamn right. But won't you tell everybody what the fuck you gotta say? Fuck the police coming straight from the underground.
That's right. Look, sometimes it is what it is.
Yeah,
Sometimes you have to say,
Call it what it is, guys.
yeah, call it what it is.
Call
Call
it
a
what it
spade a spade. Tell the police. Welcome, guys. I am Taquela. Please follow us on AfterBuzz TV, and you can follow me personally at Taquela_I am on all social media aspects. Let's get to the rest of the hosts for the show. To my left.
My name is TK Trinidad. You can find me on everything at TK Trinidad.
And my name is Ashley Allen. You can find me on Ashley Reed Allen.
Hey guys, I am Chelsea Stark Jones, and you can find me on Twitter at the LB Playbook and on Instagram at C_S Jones.
Well, everyone, how about we just hop into it? I got to ask all first a personal question. Have you all or anyone you know really had a bad experience with law enforcement?
Yes.
You
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
Tell us, please share.
Not myself personally, but I've definitely had family members who, based on the car that they're driving, they've been stopped in certain neighborhoods over and over by the same police officer.
Stereotyped,
So, yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
How about you, Chelsea?
Same thing. Friends and family. My stepdad's gone pulled over several times. Funny story. He actually is a special effects artist, so he got pulled over, and he has this dead fake body in his car, and the cops were like, "Take it out," and he had to prove that was fake. I mean, that is a little bit questionable, but they like really made him drag it out and all that stuff. And then coworkers that I know for driving through a certain neighborhood that's mostly predominantly white,
Driving
being
while
pulled
black.
over.
Yeah.
That thing. So yeah, I think it's common somewhat.
Sadly for us, but I love how we go into this episode and it's like the script is flipped now.
Love it.
So we get to see, like Boris Korjo or Prosecutor Ray Van says, how would you react if the victim were white? And I think when he says that directly at the screen, it made it personalized. I kind of sat up a little straight and was like,
powerful.
what's about to happen next? So how did you ladies take that coming in for the beginning of the show?
I loved it because it proves how empathetic you are despite what color your skin is.
Totally
Like,
agree.
I still felt the same way as if it were black people.
Yeah.
And this is like the only hit I have on it because the people that should be watching it probably don't watch the
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like what I'm really hoping that this episode, garners enough attention where, it will be shown in other places because it's just like, I still felt the same way.
Definitely.
I still felt anger. I still felt empathetic despite that whole thing. So, hopefully some folks.
Yeah, I mean, it's an argument that I try to bring up with some of my friends all the time. Was like, if the roles were reversed, if this was a white person getting treated this way, how would you feel? And so to actually see it like play out on
Yes.
television, like it's totally different than to just say it.
Exactly.
But to see it, it was like
You have the visuals there. It's
it-
more
it-
powerful.
It
It
hurt
was-
just as much.
It was great to definitely see it because, I mean, like you guys saying, if you try to describe certain situations that you've gone through with the police or whatever to a person of another race, they're probably not going to ever understand. But now that we have something that's documented that they can watch that's almost real that they can relate to, I think it'll hit home with people.
So next thing we see is Jaden Jenkins' lifeless body laying on the curb, blood spewing from his body. To me, when that image opened up for that scene, it was kind of like, okay, wow, it's about to get real and real heavy on this episode. So then we also fast forward a little bit, we see that what we may not usually have in our African American communities, but there was Brody who comes up and says, I've seen it, everything. I want to testify. I want to tell you what it is. And his brother Troy is kind of like, no, man. And you hear people call him snitch in the background, things of that nature, kind of bringing what maybe some African American communities do go through when there are lives that are endlessly killed. That perspective, how did you ladies think about that perspective being brought to screen for everyone?
Well,
to
first
see?
let me just say Brody's
He's gonna be your MCA moment.
let me just state that. I had to look him up on Twitter and IMDb. It's like, oh, okay. So kudos to you, Brody. It was just different because it was so odd to see essentially the roles were reversed, but they also applied all the stereotypes to the roles.
Yes.
So even the mom, she was wearing like you know,
Yeah.
I call it the boom shika chains with the
Oh,
earrings.
okay.
Like she was there, I was like, oh, like okay, like it
Yeah,
felt
they
kind
have
of
that,
weird. Like
the
it felt like
cornrows
Very
and stuff like
yeah.
that on the women.
Yeah.
The first like 5 minutes, I was like, hold on, this feels weird.
Yeah.
Watching this, but you know, after you get into the story, it's like okay,
Yeah.
you kind of ignore all of that stuff and like listen to the storyline.
Yeah. Like, I wonder how like the actors like prepped for that.
For
like,
that
this-
role,
Yeah.
They
yeah.
had, like, did they bring in like the hood squad? Like,
Yeah,
like,
go
oh,
to the
yeah.
Blazer
I wonder
comes in
how
with
that
that.
made them feel to say, okay, you have to wear these big earrings that you don't normally wear,
Yeah.
or whatever. Like,
Well, a lot of it's part of the culture now, like the hip hop culture.
Yeah.
So if they're
Right,
familiar
yeah.
with that, then yeah. But it's just kind of like, yeah, it definitely made me feel a little like I don't.
It was
then-
uncomfortable
yeah.
for me. I was like, okay, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it wasn't Irv Gotti handling it and it was
Right.
somebody else that I didn't know, then I would have been like, okay, is this like is this a spoof?
Someone
Like
not
where's
in touch
Right.
with
Right.
black
Yeah.
culture.
so
yeah.
I definitely appreciated it, but it was definitely a little different.
It was, yes.
So for us to, I guess, be welcomed into the jungle, what is known as their hood or their projects. First of all, I really love the play on that. It was really cool. But when we come in and see, was it Brody or was someone else just being approached by the police officers because they happened to look like they were in the wrong place? And the first question the police officers asked them, like, no,
ID
sorry,
and
it was
pass.
going back to not Brody, but Jaden before he was actually killed. Like, are you on probation or are you on parole? Like,
Yeah, the first thing that
how do
they-
you assume something?
Those are
All
the
that
only
questions.
two
This all
options.
too exactly.
Yeah.
Like, could I not have a friend living in this neighborhood? Could I just be leaving from
was
you
walking
know
on his
playing
front
something
door, yeah.
right? Basketball, pickup, you know, anything. And I just thought that was kind of eye-opening actually, because that really is what happens to a lot of our young men. It's like, what are you doing? Maybe not the verbal words of just saying, are you on probation or are you on parole?
Yeah.
But there's
Just getting
The
how they
assumptions.
come
for
around and
no
ask.
reason. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
what
I-
are you doing here?
Yeah.
That's the question. It doesn't make any sense.
There we go. Yes.
I feel like a lot of the images took they took a lot of the images from a lot of the shootings last
That
year,
have
Yeah.
happened.
They
which is
definitely
really
did.
like
The
really
hoodie, the-
made sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With
That was
Trayvon
definitely
Martin.
a
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
reference with the hoodie.
And then even later in the show, once we'll get to in
Yeah.
the end, but we see the Eric Garner reference as well. But let's
Mm-hmm.
hold on for that. So let's go into a little bit of Ray Vance's role as a prosecutor. So he's kind of seen as the sellout of the community because he is a black prosecutor and he's trying to withstand or withhold and more so appease to the white community.
Right.
Watching that yourselves on the television or in the show, how did that make you ladies feel or thought process about that?
To me, I mean, maybe there are, but I just wish there were more white prosecutors now that were standing up for some of these black murders and stuff like that. When I saw that, I was like, oh, that's real. Like, I actually liked the fact that he was a black man that was standing up and defending this white boy that got murdered for no reason.
Right.
So I liked how it kind of makes me think that maybe one day we will have that in actual society when more people of the opposite race will be standing up and standing for
Right.
these black kids that are getting killed for no reason.
I think the fact that his character was black kind of shows you that there are some white prosecutors who will stand up and do the right thing.
Definitely.
So that was my take.
Oh, well,
on
that's been
that.
happening for years. Like in the civil rights movement, it wasn't for like I'm sure you guys all saw Selma. It
Right.
wasn't for a lot of those folks. A lot of stuff we have, unfortunately, wouldn't have gotten done because they kind of helped the way. I definitely liked him being a prosecutor is great, but the theme of it all, it's not a new thing. The whole thing is that if the roles were actually reversed in real life and we were actually the majority, we would still probably treat minorities that way as black folks. So it's not necessarily on a higher level. It's not necessarily the concept of race relations. It's just who's on top and who's not.
Exactly.
So if for instance, Africa was full of like white folks, and we as black folks were the white folks, we'd still treat
Because
folks
that
terribly.
Play on
Yeah.
power.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just it's a terrible concept, but it almost felt like a Planet of the Apes type thing, like everything like
It did.
Yeah.
That's
like
very
everything
good
was
reference.
very 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 different and odd. But I did like the play, like Boris Kojo too.
Yes, always Boris
They
Kojo,
played
always
a
in
lot
anything.
they played a lot of eye candy in here. It's like yeah.
We
Appreciate
Yeah, it's definitely.
And then while we're at it, I just want to give a shout out to Tyron Turner from Menace to Society. I'm glad to
Yes.
see him back on TV too. He was another good one as well. And
they
the
were
oldie
all-
but goodie and Clifton Powell, like it's
Yeah.
really
All
A1
the
cast for
men
the
were-
faux show.
Right.
Yes.
Amen.
So-
Thank you.
So we kind of see how Ray comes in and he's talking to Brody. Basically, he gets him to come and testify as a witness. So in that aspect, you see how it's kind of trickling down to his life. His brother gets jumped for it. He comes in, he's kind of like isolating a little bit from the community at first. The little girl who was trying to hit on him specifically. So in those forms and that tales, would you think that it was still wise for him to come out, or was as a witness and testify against the killing, or would it have been better to kind of like stay in the background and not have an opinion? That's always an option.
I mean, that's what we deal with today,
Right.
Like, even if you take it away from something as drastic as killing, you take that to the office place and you see somebody stealing the pens. You know what I'm saying? It's just like all these little things. It's like you have to think about the repercussions.
Yeah,
say if
true.
you do that and you rat them out, and now this person gets reprimanded. Now you're known in the office as a snitch.
Exactly.
It's just all these little office relationships, like all that stuff. So
yeah.
it plays out in life too. So you have to almost think things through, but it doesn't matter because you don't know what the outcome could be.
Yeah, I mean, because when he first came forward and said that he wanted to be a witness, it seemed like he didn't really think about what could happen
Right.
if he
Definitely.
said,
He
I'm
was
going to be a
trying to do the right
witness. He
thing.
was like, I want to be a witness. And
Yeah.
he like didn't think about it. And then as everything started happening is when he was like, oh, maybe I don't want to do this, you know?
Yeah, because even at one point, Troy said to Brody, he
Yes.
said, in the jungle, telling the truth has consequences.
Definitely.
And as we all know, like they say, snitches get stitches. And unfortunately, like, I personally don't believe in that. Like, if something's wrong, like, you need to say something.
Right.
But I mean, in real life, sometimes that's not the best decision.
But good point. Like, I mean, it was kind of evident, like, we've heard it throughout our lives, maybe in lives of others, snitches do get stitches.
Right.
But at the same time, where you have the police coming in, like Marshall and Tyron Turner, I forgot his actual character's name, but you come in and you're threatening my family. We see
Right.
them physically abuse Troy in an effort to threaten him to tell Brody not to testify.
Right.
So in that film, it's kind of like a catch-22. That's why I asked initially, do you tell or do you not tell?
Yeah.
Not necessarily the mode of trying to snitch or not, but more
Right.
so your life, your family's
Right.
life, and future for
Yeah.
that.
But see, even you trying to do the right thing and not necessarily telling on someone is snitching to
Right.
people.
Very
So,
true.
It's like you can't win for, like, if you try to do the right thing, it doesn't matter either way.
Yeah.
Someone's gonna be upset.
Yeah, I mean, I was rooting for him to testify. I wanted him to do it because I was
Yeah.
like, someone needs to step up and make a change. And
Right.
there's always that one step and that one opportunity. And I was like, please just do it.
Yeah,
So
it
I
did.
was hoping for it.
That was one area for me where I was like, I hope our men, because I feel like, because it's on BET, we're going to be the main ones kind of watching it. But our young men can see that and how it
Yeah.
does. Sadly, Brody does die at the end of the episode. That's not how everyone's life is going to play out
Right.
if they do come up to be a witness. But kind of, turn our eyes for a minute too on what could happen. Like, if I step up and testify, I could be saving the life of someone else. I can be getting this bad cop off the street. Like, there's so many more greater repercussions that could happen rather than being scared.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like on the bigger picture too, it's just all the little things that you do for generations after you.
Yeah.
Like,
Right, correct.
think of the slave ship. If everybody jumped off the boat or everybody just said, no, I'm not gonna hop, I'd rather die first, then technically none of us would be here. So it's just like, sometimes you have to make that decision like, okay, well, I'm gonna take this sacrifice, whether it's death or whether it's, losing a job or whether it's whatever, in order for the greater good. And if you do it with that mindset, then that sacrifice doesn't seem as big. But if you do it with the mindset like, I'm just going to do this, and then you realize the sacrifice is going to cut into you, then,
Right.
now you're going to get scared. So I think it's just kind of that mindset where I think as a community, that's where we have to come from versus
Yes.
as a whole society minus color, we've become very selfish.
Very
like
true.
it's
Very
all
true. I
it's all
agree.
about me versus, setting up a legacy. And so that's where we need to kind of get to where, if y'all don't know who Killer Mike is, y'all need to look into
Killer
it.
Mike. Oh, yeah.
Like, all those little things. If we start chipping
Yeah.
away at that and build as a community, then we don't necessarily have to have a problem as, snitching, because now we have a lawyer who knows the community, who will stand up for us, and we can actually pay that lawyer.
Yes.
So
The safety and security behind that as well,
Right.
too. Correct.
And we need our police to know the community as well. And I
Very
feel
true.
like that's a problem. Like, the police don't know the community that they're policing, and that's a big problem. That's where that trust relationship is broken.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a catch-22 because I know a
Always.
lot of cops, and the reason why they don't necessarily live in the community because now you know where they live.
Right.
Exactly.
Right? So it's kind of like, yeah, you want them to know the community. And it makes sense to put them through some type of training. You know, it's how they go about that and who the training is coming from. Like, you know.
So we kind of move into next meeting Brody's employers. Reporter Bob Davis, you know, and that infamous wife of his, Miss Jenny.
Miss Jenny.
But
Jenny
let's
from the
start off
Eyes.
first. You know, they're in a meeting and he's trying to talk to his constituents and saying, you know, how can they stop those riots, the outrage, the police killings and everything in their communities. And, you know, one of the things is like, the question was, how do we spin the story? And he does say it's how the clothes that we're wearing kind of seem threatening to a peace officer at one point. And then Jenny asked, you know, how can clothes be threatening? Would anyone like to try to give that a stab? Like, how can clothes be threatening?
That's a catch-22. Like you play. It's like you either choose to play the game or you don't play the game.
Right.
Like, you know, every time I travel, every time I would go to the airport, I always wear a suit. 80% of the time, I would get into first class.
Yeah.
Really?
I was taught that too.
Yeah.
When you go in, you wear
Yeah.
a suit and
You see
not
all
in
those
sweats
yoga
or jeans.
Yeah, all those people who wear the yoga pants and their
Some
pajama
tennis
bottoms
shoes.
and their tennis shoes.
Hair
Y'all not
ties
getting,
wrapped up.
y'all not
I'm
getting
I'm
into
in
first
the middle.
class.
I'm finding
not in the
coach.
yoga pants, but I'm not in the suit. either.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I used to go in because my dad used to be a tailor, so I used to go in like
Oh, okay.
full suits
Wow.
with the heels, and like every trip,
Okay.
I would get into first class. And it's like, you know, you play that game, and it's an unfortunate game because you know what woman doesn't want to, you know, ride it out in some yoga pants.
Right, comfortability. Kind of,
Right.
you're about to take the flight, like you want to be comfortable, but at the
Yeah.
same time, it is about presence and image. I actually work at the airport, and I had a passenger, a black gentleman, and he was like, "Excuse me." He was still in like khakis and a button up. He was like, "I'm not in my suit like I regularly am." He was coming in from JFK. He was like, and I would get on my sons if they ever got on a flight like this. They know it's suits. They don't have to be tied, but they know it's suits because it's
Right.
the presentation. And it definitely used to be like that in the culture of flying, like late 60s, 70s, even early 80s. But now it's so lackadaisical. It's like we don't remember just the status that we're traveling in and
Right.
how we can be perceived, sadly, but
still
it's the
perceived,
truth.
yeah.
Correct.
Well, yeah, I mean, even when they're talking about just spinning the story in general, and like that's the thing that they're looking to like divert people's attention. Well, look what he's wearing. Like what he's wearing is bad. Like that. It does suck that we have to keep ourselves to a higher standard like every single day. And then for her to it really pissed me off when she was like, "Well, why are his clothes threatening?" And she didn't like follow it up with anything. She kind of just like sat back down and was very demure about it. I was like, "Speak up, woman! Like
Yeah.
you're in this room
Yeah.
with all these leaders. Like, speak up. Obviously, you don't agree with what they're saying, so." Like say something.
Well,
and
he
so,
kind of shut her up, you know.
Yeah.
He did that
He
little
did that
thing.
handshake,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
still,
no,
like-
it's not your turn to talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not.
Her
She's-
look pretty.
Yeah, he made her for the trophy.
Yes.
Yes.
For sure.
So I guess we can go ahead and hit in on this affair is what I want to call it. But towards the end, I kind of exactly that's what I say. So how about we just start off
I mean, she
with
just had an itch you needed to
with
scratch.
yeah, okay.
She wanted some milk.
Right.
Young milk. Just out the cow.
That's what I say. So she had me at first, especially when they had the scene, the close up where there she walks by and they
And
kind of
hold
hold
her
hands
hand.
or something. So I'm like, okay, maybe this is about to be a little bit more deeper until I start seeing her just like you said, definitely just itch to scratch.
Yeah.
It was more so eye candy, something
he's
untouchable
like the pool
for
boy.
him, and then for her, yeah.
yeah.
Well, she asked him, has he ever been with a black woman?
That was I was going to say. So maybe that was kind of
What did
curious,
the
intriguing
girl,
for him,
The
or-
girl on the project, she's like, she got jungle
Oh,
fever.
and that's an old, what, like 80s, 90s term too. I don't know if
I
I
was
still use that.
dead.
But that made me laugh though because of that old.
But even
The-
that
in the
reference,
project.
Jungle
Yeah.
Fever. She was even a song.
yeah,
Yeah.
even that reference to the jungle. Like I don't know, like what
Where it
states
came
are
from.
where you guys grew up, but like to me, it feels like there's a place called the jungle in almost every major city.
Yeah.
Like I'm from Canada, and we have a
Oh,
jungle
wow.
in Canada, so it's just kind of very. It almost felt like. You know how there's like a Martin Luther King Street on every place? It
Yeah.
felt like there's all like,
There's
and no
always
matter
a
where you,
jungle
yeah,
everywhere
no
you
matter
go.
where you put it, there's always a jungle.
I'm gonna have to look into that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because
Okay.
I believe we have one here in LA too. Ooh, don't quote me on it, but there's a place
We'll
in
confirm.
LA where it's just like I think it is called the jungle, where it's
Okay.
like, yeah, you don't want to go there.
Yeah.
So we can go ahead and jump in, still being on the theme of the affair towards.
What else? I liked it. Shoot.
I thought it was weird.
I feel felt good about, like I said, about the hand touch, but afterwards I was like, okay, get to what someone's purpose is. Was it either his purpose or maybe, okay, I'm banging my boss's wife?
Well, I thought she was actually genuinely, like, because their pillow talk seemed like, you know, are you going to testify? Like, what do you think? Or do you think I should? Like, it seemed kind of genuine, like they cared about one another.
Well, like he's like a puppy.
Yeah.
That's what I started thinking towards the end. Like, okay, was her ploy this whole time to get him to testify, or was it like
was she working
him on behalf of her husband? Yeah,
I don't think so.
No, okay.
I think she just thought
She
he
just
was
wanted some
young,
fresh
he was fine, and
he
you
was
know, the
easy to
husband's
manipulate.
old.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
abs versus dad bod.
She must have really wanted it too, 'cause she went to the jungle.
Okay, wait,
Yeah.
but when she walked in and when we first met Jenny and she was in that robe and stuff like that,
Okay.
Muslim, I was like, what is she doing?
Yeah.
Her husband's right there.
Yeah, that's like she was breaking all types of rules. Even when she was bringing him upstairs in the house, I was out here and I was like, that's side chick 101. You can't be bringing the person to the house.
And
Like,
you
listen.
put your own bed
And
in
your own
like,
bed.
That's what I was like.
And you don't know what
okay.
time your husband's not even on a trip either.
Thank you.
Fine.
That was when I wanted him to come
you know
through the
something.
door.
I just say I've watched enough shows, and I know this is LA. Folks be doing all types of crazy stuff, and you just even take it to the basic level. Like you're in your parents' home, like, and you trying to get away with something. You're not gonna bring.
No.
Yeah, true
Like,
that.
That was an R. Kelly, Mr. Biggs.
Yeah. Oh,
Like
yeah.
that
Yeah. I felt
True
like
that.
they could have expanded, because I know every week is a different story.
Yes.
I felt like they could have expanded this particular story a little bit more, because like even the affair, I would love to explore that a little bit more, and we do find out
definitely.
that he does pass away, but it felt like that last part, it was like they're just trying to tie it up because they only had 2
so much
hours.
time.
Right.
So I would have definitely loved them to explore that a little bit more, even, you know, to another episode, or I don't know. Just the tying of it was kind of weird, and then how she turned around and said, you know, he was like raping me or some type of crazy
That
thing.
didn't surprise me,
No.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
I was mad.
I
but it
was
didn't
too.
surprise
Like
You were
really-
mad as if it was the other. That's why this
Yeah,
is
yeah.
so good.
You know, because it took me back. I don't know if you guys have seen the 13th, and like just how black men and white women, that whole depiction was
Yeah.
with how it's like black men were always attacking white women, and how now that the roles are reversed, it's like
Same
this
thing.
white man is attacking this black woman, and that's what it took. That's what it reminded me of, and it was so frustrating.
That reminded me of. Have you guys seen Rosewood?
Oh, yes.
I saw that recently because we had
Yes.
John Singleton on a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Even closer to home, LeVar Ball. I don't know if you
Okay.
guys. He was on a show, Colin Cowherd's show. The chick said like weeks ago, like, you know, I don't think he's a good father, and we can go into that whole thing.
wow.
So LeVar Ball came on the show and he's like, look, I'm not even talking to you, because he already knows she was talking mess. So she played the female card on him, like, you know, you probably don't like me because I'm female. Why aren't your shirts for female? Then the next day she said she felt threatened, and I was like, LeVar Ball called it because he was like, look, I'm afraid of somebody like you.
Right.
And he called it because the next day she's like, she feels threatened. I'm like, you're in a studio. I think it's on Fox. There's
Yes.
some security
And there
guards,
are
like,
security. There
like,
are more people
you're
behind there.
everywhere.
Everybody's there. Yeah.
you're good. Like,
Yeah.
So for you to play that role, and then I hope it's just ignorance. Like, I hope she learns from it, but I highly doubt it. But for her to play that role and not even know the consequences and how many people died with those few sentences
Right.
is crazy.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's like an everyday thing, and people don't even know how much power they have in certain instances by certain words that they
By
say.
saying stuff like that.
So
I'm gonna have to look that up though.
Oh,
But
my
you know,
gosh.
credit to LeVar Ball though. He is called a lot of things, from his kids and his career, or Lonzo's career, to a lot of everything though. So not surprising that he even called that too on that lady
you
though.
can't hate on somebody who's trying to do something great. But look up Donkey of the Day by Charlamagne Tha God from Breakfast Club, talking about that situation. Straight
Hilarious.
fire.
I can only imagine. If Charlamagne
Straight-
did it, I can only
Straight
imagine.
fire. It was love him. He's amazing.
So we see Brody kind of taking his last words, and in the midst of that, trying to get Jenny to tell the truth. He says, "I can't breathe," which was resembling the Eric Garner death. To me, that was a part that kind of hit me really, really hard watching the show. And then I also would hope too they take away because we're thinking about it in reverse, so that if there's someone of another ethnicity watching the show, they will be pulled into it as sympathetic as I was, just because of what was taking place. You see it now at a different angle and how it took place too. So hopefully it would open up the hearts of some other people and viewers watching it as well.
I don't know.
And the way that Bob was explaining what happened to
Yeah.
the police was just, I was just
He
like,
was
oh,
attacking.
so
I
sad.
hit him in self-defense.
Yeah, it was completely not the truth.
And then to me, I'm wondering also, as to your point, I wish we could get into a little more, because what is prosecutor going to say now? Because you sat there, you witnessed him literally die in the hands of the
front of
police.
you.
Exactly. You got one cop off of him, but not the other one, which was the one that took his life.
Right.
So I would love to see how that would play out even a little better or more too.
Now he has a decision to make, because
Right.
if he does go and fight against the grain, he could lose his job. He could become a pariah. Like, how effective are you now if you try to just eliminate that one and you're not successful at it? So there's so many layers to this, because even on an everyday thing, like, I don't know if you guys saw was it Insecure?
Yeah.
I saw that where the chick, she came in the law office, she was being herself, and they called her out, and she got fired. So it's just kind of like, it's unfortunate, but it's like you either choose to wear the mask and play the game, or you don't. But do you wear the mask, play the game, and get your money and go about your business and create businesses for other folks, or do you fight the power from the bottom? Like, it's really, as minorities, you have that decision to make, because you can see people do it on both sides.
Exactly.
But as long as you do something versus just sit around and not know what's going on. So this was a really, like, so many layers to the show. It was a really good show.
Definitely. I totally agree. And so we'll kind of move into the trial. So we kind of see he's Ray Vance, Boris Kojo, is trying to prepare the trial. He has his first witness come up, or we thought would be Brody, but he's not there. And so because of that, he kind of has to rest his case, because he doesn't have anything else to hinge on for that.
Right.
And then you see that the cops are all acquitted of all charges. And
Which happened a couple weeks ago.
that
Philando Castillo.
Philando, correct. And well, seeing it on the video or on the show today, I kind of felt proud at that moment. I was like, wow, just the imagery of it. It's a black jury, black judge, black officers, and they're acquitted. So it kind of felt like ecstatic about it a little bit. It was emotion that came in through, I guess is the right word. How about you ladies? Was that any emotion or anything that kind of drew from you on that part of the show?
I honestly didn't even really pay attention to the jury, because I was so upset
That
he died,
Yeah.
and like the way that it played out. I was like done with it at that point.
I was mad because, and taking it a couple steps back, when they were doing the jury selection, and first there was a black man, and it was kind
That
of
was
funny.
funny.
At first it was
It
funny, and the
was.
black man was like, "Oh, and when I do get stopped, they're really nice." and
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. And I was like, "It's
Outstanding
not, yeah,
officer.
Right.
they're so great." And then the white woman was saying, like, "Yeah, my husband has a beard and tattoos, and that's always trouble and
Right.
X, Y, and Z." And then she's not a juror,
Right.
and then going into it, it's an all black jury, because they don't get stopped by police and all this stuff. And so for me, it was frustrating, and I think it also goes back to what we were saying in the beginning with the empathy of, like, it doesn't matter what color you are, it's the injustice.
Right.
Right.
That's not getting, that's they should have been convicted,
Right.
and they weren't. So I think that I was angry.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
upset.
It's crazy, because even this police situation, like, growing up in Toronto, I didn't have to, that wasn't my life. So I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was like, I live by a police station, literally less than a block away. And I make it a point, like, when the cop car, like, I'm not driving dirty or anything like that, but when a cop car pulls up, like, I make it a point to acknowledge them. So I was telling a friend that, and he's like, yeah, and you don't do that, because the minute you acknowledge them, they think that there's something wrong with you. And I'm like, it's just such a crazy thing how different lives, like, interpret different things. And, I've done this for quite some time, and I've never, had any backlash from the cops. However, it might be that one cop who's like, they just see, I'm not trying to be friendly, or just not even like, all right, you just acknowledge people.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And they don't see that. They just see a black chick in a car bumping hip hop music.
Yeah.
And, then that's a whole nother issue. So it's just, it's the world that we live in today. and then the fact that that song came out 25 years ago,
And it's still relevant.
and it's still relevant.
It's crazy.
Shows like movies like Boys in the Hood that came out, I think it was like 20 years ago. Same thing.
Yep.
Like, I don't know. It's just like, is it ever gonna get better? And what are we
What can we
doing?
do?
I mean, I think it's slightly getting better. I saw Ice Cube on something. I think he was on The View. Yeah, on The View. And he was talking with the ladies, and they asked the same thing. Like, this song, you came out with the song 25 years ago, but it's still relevant. And he was saying, they asked him, do you think things have changed? And his response was, I do, because now we are starting to get outraged at the police because they're not being held accountable for what
And
they're
they're
doing.
actually getting not convicted, but they're actually
getting
going
to trial. And he's
Yeah.
like, back then, that wasn't happening.
Right.
So he's like, at least we've come that far, but there's still such a long way to go. Long way to go.
Which like also when you think about the civil rights, it's like we had so many leaders in the civil rights, and we do have leaders now, but not on, especially with social media. You think they'd be
More
almost on
vocal.
that
You have
level.
so many platforms.
Right.
So do we need more leaders, or is it an individual thing? Like Killer Mike had a really good point as far as investing in black banks. Not to say that you don't invest in other banks, so don't send me any Twitter. But you're investing in your own community so that it cycles back. So now you don't have, like, you can afford, the houses get better in the lower income neighborhoods and all this other stuff. So then the folks who are complaining or feel like the people don't deserve better education and books, we can now fund that ourselves.
Right.
So you have all these little things that we can do. But again, I think we've come to such a point where it's just, as a society, we're more about, all right, like, don't get me wrong, I do selfies too, but all right, I'm going to do a selfie, I need to get my good light, and you spend 30 minutes doing that versus actually like
30 minutes
educating
looking.
yourself or
minutes
doing
researching
something else,
something,
or
right.
like helping somebody.
Right.
So
Definitely.
And I think it's all about the perception that also is painted in media and on the news. Because just like if we go back to the show where Bob was interviewing Vance and he's saying, well, how do you feel about these innocent police being taken to trial? He's putting that
Narrative, image,
that narrative out there before the trial has even happened. He's throwing his opinion on everyone else and almost making it as true. And sadly, for some people who don't have their own opinion or can't watch the news and make their own decision, they're going to listen to him saying innocent cops, and then that's going to be their opinion.
well, the news is not the news like it was.
No, definitely not. No.
You definitely have to do like
that's another
research.
sad thing. That's another
Yeah.
sad thing. You can't watch the news and take it for what it is. You have to listen to what they say and then do your own research.
You have to listen to like 3 or 4 news stations, then read a book,
Right.
then like double check, cross reference,
Right.
and
Right.
it's just
Some other single
yeah.
one-line or
Yeah.
podcast, things of that nature.
It's crazy.
And then he also almost, in a way, threatened him by saying, "We have the name of your star."
That's what I was
Yeah.
going to get to.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I took that as a threat.
Oh, I
yeah.
did
And then
too.
they actually leaked the name.
And you're
out
not
there.
supposed to come out. Now they're at his house waiting for him to come out, which,
And that scared him.
Right.
Yeah.
That scared him.
Which is a whole thing too, which I thought with the 2 hours it wasn't enough time, because I think technically, and of course I'm not a lawyer, but I think technically they should have put him in witness protection. At least until the trial started.
I've been watching a lot of The Wire lately.
yeah, Wire is amazing.
Throwback,
and
gosh.
they did not protect the witness.
No.
Oh yeah.
Not all the
Yeah.
time.
But you think
But
that's such a high profile case.
That's what I was
part
gonna
of the
say,
narrative, though.
yeah.
Like, do they put black witnesses? Well, in this case, white, the urban people. Do they put them in witness
question.
protection? Or if it is offered, do they even accept it?
Right.
Good question.
That was a good question.
I don't know.
Chime in. Let us know if you're in the chat. And if you watch this, chime in on YouTube and in the comments for us at AfterBuzzTV.com. But that's a great question to pose to as well, especially because we're trying to look at the script or the show, this episode specifically, and reverse racism and police brutality. So it would be interesting to find out or to know like the statistics and numbers to see if it's even offered to begin with. Yes, and if we are more likely or not likely to take it. Good point.
We have I'm gonna butcher your name, Zaza, on the chat. So she said overall it was a good episode, but there were scenes that were a bit choppy, which I definitely agree with.
Yeah.
And always, I need to watch that interview, but 50 is saying that it's Irv is copying him in the whole Power show, which I think Power is slightly different.
No.
It's definitely
yes. Can we
different.
stop?
I'm only on
50?
season 2, but
Yeah.
I don't know the storyline in
50's
Power.
No, I don't think it's
stop
the same
coming
at
for
all.
everybody.
Yeah.
Like,
Just
give us
because
the
it's
TV.
an urban
good.
show.
Exactly.
No.
No,
And I
don't do
love
that.
Power, but it's
Yeah.
not the
And
same.
I love me some 50.
Right?
I met him in person. Woo.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I was at the Power release party or something on
season
Friday.
premiere?
Okay.
The
Okay,
season premiere, and everybody was there. Everybody and 50. And then she agrees with the whole Planet of the Apes thing. So
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for chiming in. We do appreciate it.
Yes.
So we can kind of go towards the end, I guess, of the scene. For me, which was a shocker. So that's why I said initially when I seen, it was just the blackness of the end of the show, the jurors, even Ray Vance, the police officers acquitted. That made me feel like a little pride. It was like a little tingle in my spirit just because to see that on the reverse now. But then it goes to just clips of different events that have happened, people's killings and lives. And to me, the shocker that kind of like brought me way back down and surprised me was seeing Brody Jenner hanging from the tree in a noose. I was like, wait.
I was shook.
How did that? I mean, I understand the concept, but where did they find Brody Jenner? Like, why? Like, out of all the white,
Wait, that was really Brody Jenner?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I had to
out
stop
of
and
all-
watch one more time.
after
Like
all,
that.
yeah, it was
Yeah,
on
that was
TMZ.
him.
They were talking about it.
Okay.
But of all the white actors in Hollywood,
I did
like,
not even. That didn't even. Now I have to go back and look at that. That's
Yeah.
weird.
On Brody. That's what it
yeah.
was.
Or
So-
someone
But I
that
did not see that coming.
no,
that-
so that's when it was like, whoa, because then again, it blinds me. It's not color, it's
And-
not racism, it's persons.
And then they did the whole the King beatings as
Oh,
well.
Rodney
The,
King.
yeah, the
Yeah.
Rodney King beatings. They did the 91, the tape,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah,
was
they
just
did do
like,
that.
it was. I had chills up and down my body, and I started to get like watery eyes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Where
That
it's
whole
like,
riot
yeah,
scene.
it hit me. It was
I think the
powerful.
first moment that like really hit me towards the end of the episode was when Troy found out that Brody was killed, and the camera did the circle around him. You could just see all of the different emotions and stuff that
Right,
he was going
yes.
through. That's when it hit me like, okay, it's about to go down.
And
Yeah.
It's about to go down.
the mother's reaction too. When the first the Jenkins kid got killed in the beginning, and she was telling Brody not to leave the house.
Yeah.
Like, I have a little brother, and I think of my mom when he's at an age when he could start going out and like stuff like that.
Right.
Like how scared she's gonna be knowing that he's going out with his friends and just worried about that. Like the
Right.
fact that that's something that a mother has to worry about.
which is scary.
It's
always-
so
yeah.
scary. And so, yeah, like seeing the family's reactions to it all, that hit home too. Because, I mean, we saw with Philando Case, his girlfriend and his mother reacting to everything. Like, it brings it home once
His
you
girlfriend
see.
was in the car.
In the
She was
car
on
with a
Facebook
child,
Baby in the
Live.
back,
and then,
yes.
and then when the police dashboard video came out, and you see the little baby getting out of the car into the other, I was, yeah.
Yeah, and then they had the nerve to say that she did a Facebook or she did a Instagram video of her smoking weed. It's like, what does that have to do with?
Well, the
Yeah.
same
So
thing
it's
with
just-
during the trial
Yeah.
when in the trial when one of the officers was testifying, and he was like, "Well, he looked like he was high. He looked like he was high. His pupils were dilated, and blah blah blah." And they're like, "Well, the toxicology report came back, and he wasn't high."
Yeah.
And it's like, "Well, you know, he looked like it."
The
Like,
Yeah.
the
like,
whole
and that was
confrontation was less than 30 seconds.
It
So how
was.
can you even?
And
Yeah.
then too with the whole how everything is streaming now. It was not caught on tape, but audio recording.
audio,
You
yeah.
hear
Right.
it, and it's just it was
Yeah.
it was very much life imitating art and art.
I know a lot of people now, especially with our smartphones, they have video, audio recording all the time in
Yeah.
anything where they think they feel there's an altercation, and it's crazy that you have to
Think
Yeah,
to do
yeah.
that.
that.
Yes.
like that's going to be your
you
first.
have to be ready,
Right.
like all the time.
Like, okay, I might die in this situation. Like it's a scary thought to think about that. And even with kids, it's just like I couldn't even imagine. Like I can't imagine thinking that your child is not safe being that by the people who are supposed to protect you. Like it's just a crazy thought to me because I didn't grow up like that. So it feels like it's
Unsettling.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it feels it feels very unsettling to think that somebody's gonna look at me before I even speak, before I even say anything,
Right.
and just assume all these lists of things. And it's just crazy because when you actually have a conversation with somebody, you can literally look at and see their face changes because you already knew that they had these set of stereotypes,
Mm-hmm.
and now it's changed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's just it's sad. It's sad, but I again, you know, I think we all have to kind of just do our part
Yeah.
and try to do at least something versus, you know,
Nothing at all.
Instagram all
Or
the
standing
time.
by, or they're very much true. I think the last point I wish we could have slowed down a little bit was the names of the 500 deaths that have happened in the past 5 years by police brutality. That number really seems astounding to me. And just to see, well, when they were doing the scroll, you could see like some of the ones we do know, the Eric Garner, Trayvon Martin, that were highlighted in red. But just to know, just across the nation, 500, and just those names, I kind of wanted to like take a moment of silence for that, at that part, for like their families and for them and their lives, because apparently they've all ended just endlessly. And like we go back to something like, what more can we do? You know, how can we do better to help this number decrease? Like that's outrageous.
But on the flip side, you this is the thing, the whole thing with the news, right? It's like, yeah, we have 500 deaths, and if both sides were reporting correctly, like, yeah, the I know obviously this would never happen. The police admit to doing something that they weren't supposed to do. They killed that person because of their skin color, or whatever, and they admit to that. Then I honestly believe all 500 deaths couldn't be of the same situation, but because nobody's talking to each other, and we're at such a high alert on everything on both sides, on all these sides, that, you know, we're doing a lot of people are claiming racism in situations where it's not racism.
It's not.
A lot of people are claiming sexism when it's not sexism. And now you have this situation where it's like, oh yeah, they died at the hands of the police, but what were they really doing? Not taking out the stereotypes or anything like that, but it's just like, okay, so did you have a gun? Because if they had a gun on them, that's a whole other situation. So, you know, we have to take in, nobody deserves to die, but we have to take into account, and then with all those stories, it feels like, you know, we're lumping it together, and now we're adding the statistics on top of it, but we don't know how these statistics came about.
The specifics of each one.
Well, I feel like in a lot of these situations, like, everybody's in a defensive stand, and that's the problem, where a situation that doesn't even need to end the way it does is escalated for no reason. Like, you have the drivers of the car who are citing out all these different laws and whatever, and it can escalate a situation to where it doesn't have to be. And then you have the police who are scared because they see all this stuff happening, and it's just everyone is just on the defense. And I feel like people just need to slow down, breathe, and communicate.
Yes.
But it's hard.
That's what I was going to say.
It's
Is
very
emotions and just the anger, the raging for how long this has been going on in any amount of level is just maddening. And that's the emotion that we mainly see projected because of that. Exactly.
It's frustrating. If you have a cop like constantly harass you on a regular basis, there's going to come a time where you break.
Definitely.
And that it definitely probably won't be that same cop, but that's essentially the whole evolution until that point. And you know, it's, of course you don't want to do that, but on a flip side, like, how can you fault that individual? Everybody has a breaking point. So,
and I think that goes too for everybody understanding each other's point of view and perspective, where I think that's where a lot of the issues lies. Like, we don't understand each other. It's like the other side doesn't get where we're coming from, and we don't get where the other side is coming from. And even talking about cops being more present in the neighborhoods that they're policing and understanding the people that they're policing, it's like we're not taking the time to actually get to know one another. And that's where all of this is coming from.
Yeah, the after school programs, that was like big.
Yeah, it was.
You know, I knew our neighborhood cop. He used to come to my school all the time. Like, there's programs like that all the time. So I don't know. Again, I think every community is different, and, you know, maybe I don't know. It's a very daunting thing to think about, but, you know,
that's because there's no one right answer.
No,
very true.
There isn't.
Well, to the point, I think we all can agree that this episode was good. It was good to see how things worked in reverse racism and police brutality. And, you know, hopefully we can have other people chime in to see how it may affect them or not. Leave your comments on AfterBuzzTV.com or follow us on YouTube. Again, I am Taquayla Jackson. Thanks for tuning in. You can follow me at all social media at Taquayla_I am.
And you can follow me on everything at TK Trinidad. Also, if you follow me on all social media, I have my birth season. It's 6 weeks long. I do have a charity event, so I am donating to Boys and Girls Club. So keep following me. I will give you guys the link. So definitely looking forward to that.
Okay, and I'm Ashley Allen. You guys can find me on all social media at Ashley Reed Allen.
And again, guys, I am Chelsea Stark Jones, and you can follow me at the LB Playbook, the Little Black Playbook, and on Instagram at C_S Jones.
Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week for BIGs. I got a story to tell.
Woo.
Thanks.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.